Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I'm Taylor Rockwell, and with me I've got a man who longs for the social media affections of Ms. Leslie Jones. It's Daryl Grove.
Hello, how you doing?
Hey buddy, good, how are you doing?
I am pretty good, thank you. I'm not as into soccer as Leslie Jones, it turns out.
It seems that way. You didn't watch, 7 games yesterday, so you're not on the ball?
No, I only watched 3.
I do think we could probably have her on the show to be an analyst. My wife has strongly encouraged us to do just that, to get her on the show to be our MLS correspondent for the playoffs.
Oh, we should absolutely try. I mean, NBC did it for the Olympics, right? We should absolutely try. If anyone listens to the show and knows Leslie Jones, please connect us.
Yeah, we're using her approach.
Yeah.
Somebody out there has to know this person, so make it happen.
Should we fill people in who maybe do not know what we're talking about? Maybe people who do not use the Twitters.
Sure, or maybe people who haven't seen SNL in 10 years and avoided the new Ghostbusters as well. Go ahead, Mr. Grove.
Oh, I've got to do it. Okay.
Yeah.
So Leslie Jones is part of the SNL cast and not a soccer fan until yesterday. She saw the cover of, I believe it's called Ville magazine, which is a Seattle-based publication, and it had 3 Seattle players on the cover. I'm looking at it right now. They are basically naked, except they're holding soccer balls. It's Nelson Valdez, Tyrone Mears, and Zach Scott. Right. So this caused Leslie Jones to tweet this out and say, I would learn all the soccer if I had one of them. And then she proceeded for the rest of the day to watch soccer. I think she watched the Chelsea-Southampton game. She watched all the MLS playoff games and more or less live tweeted all the way through. And it was magnificent.
Mm-hmm. And has promised to either watch or attend New York Cosmos games as well because they're in New York. So she's a New York loyalist, and that's good. But yeah, I did enjoy how it went from her sort of watching the games specifically to find eye candy.
Yes.
To watching the games because the crowd was fascinating.
Yeah.
To watching the games because she genuinely got into the games and enjoyed seeing people score goals.
It was for me, as a soccer fan who I guess wants soccer to grow, it was thrilling to see that. Okay, the way in was that she suddenly found that, wow, all these athletes are attractive who play soccer. And then to see her sort of find all the other stuff, like Montreal ringing the bell when they score.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff,
It's the sort of thing that you get kind of used to because we watch those games, we talk about them a lot, we've covered the playoffs before, and it's a thing that becomes like normative until somebody points out how strange it is to have a large bell in the middle of the crowd. And then you sort of think oh yeah, that is, and you see it from a complete outsider's perspective, and it makes it that much more entertaining.
It's like watching soccer with fresh eyes, but fresh, funny eyes, because Leslie Jones is a professional comedian, so you get some really funny takes on the things that you take for granted.
Basketball with feet, man. Basketball with feet and a bigger rim, I think is how she described the defensive system she was seeing in Toronto v NYCFC.
So who were her favourite players from your recollections? Because I scrolled through the whole timeline pretty much as it was happening.
Oh, Tim Howard. She's all about some Tim Howard.
Oh, she said, yes, Tim is good at his job.
It was that. It was that he has saved the game 3 times.
Right. She
commented on that. And then someone sent her the link to his shoot from the ESPN body issue,
right.
And that was pretty much all she wrote. But it was. And I think at one point she was seeing. I think it was Lionel Richie to him as he was being interviewed in the post-match coverage.
I know. Also, Jordan Morris caught her eye as well.
Oh yeah.
Hey Jordan.
They say your name's Jordan. Hey Jordan. Yeah. And then the final one, I think Alexi Lalas a little bit, because Rob Stone did give her a shout out in between games, to which she responded by yelling out loud, "Send me the dude next to you."
There couldn't be fresher soccer eyes in America than someone who doesn't know who Alexi Lalas is, right?
Yeah, Alexi Lalas, Tim Howard, and Jordan Morris are kind of known entities when it comes to U.S. soccer. So I think so, and I think also she's pretty into Josie Altidore as well.
Right. He scored in that Toronto game, right? He scored a great goal.
And she admitted that she shouldn't have been rooting for him because, again, playing New York, but she was into it because of the drama.
So can we expect? I'm imagining, when they do Weekend Update, Leslie Jones will often come on and do a bit of sort of playful flirting with young Colin Jost.
Yeah.
And then she'll essentially do a bit of stand-up to camera, right? Except she'll be sitting down behind the update desk. Do we think there's going to be a soccer segment on next week's SNL?
First of all, I can picture her absolutely walking around, because as I recall, Monday is when they have to report back. They all have to be there by noon, I think, and they start writing sketches or start pitching sketches. I mean, by Monday night is when they have to pitch the sketches.
Yeah.
And I can definitely see her in the SNL offices talking about how she didn't know anything about soccer. Like this sport's crazy. And then I can definitely see a Weekend Update segment on Saturday where she angrily gets mad at Colin for not telling her about soccer and just assuming that he knows all about it. That I can absolutely see.
Yes. And do you think, is there anyone on the SNL cast or writing crew who sort of is already a known soccer fan? Because sometimes you need that bit of support. From what I understand, you need a bit of support in the writer's room to get something through, right?
The only thing...
Lorne Michaels, secret soccer fan?
Seems unlikely, but who knows? I don't know about the current cast. I like to think that probably one of them likes soccer. But what would be hilarious, and maybe is too deep a reference, too deep a cut to make work, would be I would love to see Jason Sudeikis returning as Ted Lasso.
Of course,
to do a thing where Ted Lasso explains soccer to Leslie Jones, and then she is sort of like, that doesn't sound right. Like, wait a minute.
Oh, someone should send Leslie Jones those Ted Lasso sketches.
Yeah, that might be a good idea too. Maybe we should look into that. What about you? Can you think of any current cast members that you'd like to see in a SNL soccer sketch?
Oh, Kate McKinnon, I think, in anything is funny. I'm
the
sure
one.
She can make that work.
You could just say Kate McKinnon in any sketch, and it will work. Yeah.
And I think Kenan Thompson as an aggressive referee, I think would be funny. or a coach. I like Kenan Thompson as a coach.
I could see Kenan Thompson as like the understated suburban soccer coach who then has Leslie Jones as his outspoken assistant.
Yes!
That I could see.
It's going to end with fetch me a juice box.
There you go.
Should we move on from Leslie Jones' social media adventures, which I assume will be continued? I'm following and keeping an eye on what's going on there.
If we must, let's move to some listener questions, shall we? We've had a few. We've also had more than a few scouting reports since Mr. Grove went on vacation.
Oh yeah,
we're gonna catch up on a few of those, catch up on a few of the questions, and then obviously catch up a lot more once Daryl returns. You'll be back next weekend?
I'm back early Saturday, November 5th. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right, just in time for our game on Sunday?
Just in time for our game on Sunday. That is
Beautiful.
Not a coincidence.
I had a feeling.
Also in time for SNL.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. It all works out. Up first, we have a listener question from Mark Bujarski. Hello, Mark. Mark asks, has the Guardiola style of soccer, which is possession-based, methodical passing, etc., been usurped by the Gegenpress? He says, no question that Pep is a genius coach, and I don't want to take away from that, as he pioneered a machine at Barca that defeated all comers. However, the game seems to have changed. Now teams are figuring they can be successful against that style of play by either one, playing like Spurs and being compact but pressing at key moments, or two, playing like Atletico and bunkering, then breaking with ruthless efficiency. Mm-hmm. Do you think this is a trend that is taking over?
I'm going to say no.
I'm going to agree.
Two reasons. One, Manchester City are currently top of the Premier League, despite having what's considered a rough start to the season. Right. So imagine when they get it working, right?
Well, I think they had it working at the start of the season. I think it's easy once teams kind of go into a skid, like Man City, I guess a quote-unquote skid, since they're still top of the Premier League. Uh-huh. I think it's easy to look at other clubs that are kind of like in form at that moment and see how well they're performing. I mean, to be fair, Liverpool have been consistently performing under Jurgen Klopp. I think they're joint top of the table right now, along with Arsenal and Man City. But I think that doesn't necessarily mean that one is better than the other. I just think that they're doing different types of maybe the same thing, and they're executing them a little bit differently at different times.
And I think this gets to the heart of it as well. The Gegenpress that Mark refers to really is a Guardiola thing in many ways, right? Like, I know we don't really associate it with him because we all talked about tiki-taka for his Barcelona team from like 2009 onwards. But one of the hallmarks of that Barcelona team and all his teams since is if they lose the ball high up the field, they win it back as soon as possible, right? And then they counter the counter, which is essentially what the Gegenpress is, right? It's counter-pressing. It's just because his style didn't originate in Germany, so it didn't get a German name.
Yeah, and I think his style, there's that, but there's also the fact that his style originated with a team like Barcelona that have a tremendous amount of talent.
Yes.
The Jurgen Klopp form of gegenpressing existed or began with Mainz, that Mainz team that he initially was the manager of, where it was all about, it reminds me a little bit, hearing stories about that team reminds me of like what Shaka Smart would do with VCU, the VCU basketball team, where he would like make them do the 3-day SEAL training, where they had to do like all the rafting and hiking and running, and it was like this crazy team bonding thing. Jurgen Klopp did the same thing with that Mainz team, where he like made them go on preseason in the mountains and they could only be together, and it was this big bonding session. But it was all about the way he had to get players who weren't as good as some of their Bundesliga counterparts to execute a game plan that would allow them to be competitive. Barcelona, under Guardiola, obviously have the best players in the world, or some of the best players in the world, so he doesn't necessarily have to deal with that talent gap, but he has to find a way to get his team humming. That's what he did with his system, but that's maybe not why it wasn't quite so direct and aggressive as Jurgen Klopp's.
So, yeah, and the interesting thing now is that you have that Klopp Liverpool team that obviously does gegenpress and is more direct and aggressive than any Guardiola team, right? So it is a different style of play. Klopp used to call it what? Heavy metal football?
That sounds likely.
Yeah, I think that was the thing he said. So it is a bit more aggressive and direct. But so Guardiola gegenpresses, wins the ball high, but then is a bit calmer with it. And I think that's a hallmark of him always having more or less the best team, right? The team that just dominates the ball and is able to have, like, I was going to say 100% possession, but that's not true, but feels like 100% possession. The trick for him now is, so what, it's Man City versus Barcelona on Tuesday in the Champions League. They're hosting. Trying to do that against a team that has superior talent, which Barcelona, you have to say, have superior talent. I think that's when it becomes harder because the other side of your game is tested more than it usually is. Like against West Brom, for example. Did you see the clip of what the West Brom fans were singing at the weekend?
What, we have possession?
It was, we've got the ball, we've got the ball.
We've got the ball, yeah.
We've lost the ball, we've lost the ball. And the final score was 4-0. So that's the way Guardiola likes it, right? But you can't do that to Barcelona or like any of the other sort of top tier Champions League teams.
Well, I don't know, because this goes back to a conversation we had a couple shows ago about why Premier League teams don't do as well in the Champions League.
Yeah.
And one of my arguments was
that they're not allowed to play West Brom.
Well, there's that. But there's also the fact that they tinker a lot. They try to switch it up, that they bring in new players. Yeah. And it will be interesting. Based on current form, it seems like both City and Liverpool will have a pretty good chance of making the Champions League next year. And it will be interesting to contrast those two approaches in that tournament to see if Jurgen Klopp kind of continues to play that way and see what happens versus seeing Guardiola kind of do the changing things around, adapting a little bit. Suddenly Kolarov is a center back. Suddenly he's a forward. Who knows where he's going to be? That approach can definitely pay dividends because you can then spring some surprises. By the same token, you can try to man mark if you're Guardiola, and that can go south too. Exactly. So you get the adjusting versus playing the same way. We'll see what effects it has.
So you're talking about next season, basically?
Yeah.
In terms of short-term judgments, what do you think about using tomorrow's game, Man City versus Barcelona, as a kind of benchmark for where this Man City team is at? Because presumably they won't have Claudio Bravo sent off early in the second half.
Well, he'll be suspended.
Oh, of course he will, yeah. So what, it'll be Caballero?
Yep.
So at least it'll be... I mean, that's still not... It might be to their advantage because they won't have him trying to do too many tricks and turns coming with the ball out of the back, right?
Yeah, but I think the reason, to go away from Mark's question a little bit, I think the larger reason why I think Guardiola... He's not like antiquated. He's not usurped by any means, but I think he kind of shoots himself in the foot sometimes.
Stubborn?
Yeah, because that whole insistence on we're going to pass out of the back until I die or whatever. Again, when you...
It's either Claudio Bravo or I die.
Yeah, we'll see which happens first. But it's when you telegraph the thing that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Even if it's your strongest thing, if you're telling your opponent what you're going to do, they can plan against that and set up for it. And so we'll see if they continue to do that. But if they do, then I can see Barcelona absolutely anticipating that, adjusting their game plan, and getting a result. Yeah. So that's where I think Guardiola can get himself into trouble. It's not necessarily that his tactics are outdated. It's that I think he can be a little bit stubborn and maybe just a tiny bit arrogant in his approach.
And don't you think, to go circling back, don't you think that works when you're 2009 Barcelona and you're just kind of unbeatable? But when you're 2016 Man City and you're up against teams where Pep has already left his mark at like Bayern and Barcelona, and then other teams that have effective systems, suddenly it's a lot harder to do. It's a much higher risk factor to advertise what you're doing because it doesn't quite have that sort of intimidation factor. That, I mean, Barcelona could have told any team what they were going to do in 2009 and then crushed them anyway.
Well, see, I don't know if I agree with that, actually, because I think a big part of that 2009 Barcelona team was the ability to... because teams didn't quite know what they were going to try to do. It almost reminds me, or when they did, it reminds me of Leicester City last year, where teams knew what they were doing, but still didn't adjust their approach and ended up being punished for it.
You mean so you would have teams? Because it was a new thing.
Kind of, yeah, because it was basically this idea of like, well, we know they're going to possess, so we'll go at them and try. Oh, they've scored. Well, that's not good. All right, but now we can go at them, and then they're just going to possess the ball the whole time. And so it seems like teams weren't setting up, like Mark talked about, like Atletico now do, which is like hunkering and really frustrating Barcelona when they have possession and forcing them to commit too many numbers forward, and then you break on them. Like teams did not do that approach at all against that 2009 Barcelona team, and obviously teams suffered as a result. So then you have kind of a slow evolution in dealing with it. And so to go back to Mark's question, I wouldn't say that that's being usurped. I would say that it is bringing about a change in the game that then necessitates that you change your own game to stay like current. And I think that's what he's trying to do. I think it's just a bit of a struggle at City at the moment.
All right, so I guess the answer to Mark's question is ask us again on Tuesday afternoon.
Sure, sounds good.
All right, second question comes from Ellis Cohn. Ellis says, although I've never played myself, I feel like I have a pretty good handle on games when they're happening. But one thing I feel completely clueless about is goalkeeping. To me, almost all saves involving any diving or stretching look both amazing and difficult. Mm-hmm. I feel like he's not wrong there, right? Ellis says, could you talk about goalkeepers' decision-making, when and why keepers come off their line, what makes a save difficult, and how to distinguish a truly great save from maybe just an acrobatic one? This is a tough question, right, Taylor? Because neither of us have really played in goal to any great degree, so we're relying on almost like we can't take our own personal experiences, if that makes sense.
I mean, I played in goal until I was like 12, and I was terrible at it.
Oh, I had a couple of seasons as well, but I wouldn't say I was particularly good.
Well, I would say to go a little bit away from the question, and then we'll get back to it. I would say that part of the reason why we aren't good goalkeepers is I'm going to guess that when you would concede a goal, you would take it personally. Because that's how I was. I would be like, oh, I've let the whole team down.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely my fault.
And it had to be a continuous explanation from my parents of like, no, like 10 other people got beat before they beat you with the ball. But I feel like I would
must have been one hell of a goal.
Yeah, it was, well, yeah, every single time it was Messi dribbling or Maradona. But I think to be a goalkeeper, you first of all have to have that mentality of like, it really is, you're kind of crazy. Goalkeepers are a little bit nuts, is what I've learned. Except for my brother-in-law, who's our team's goalkeeper. He's pretty steady. But overall, the best goalkeepers I've played with were kind of lunatics a little bit. And I think that's part of it is like when it comes to the acrobatics, it is a willingness to absolutely risk hurting yourself on a continuous basis to make those saves. That's part of what makes a save impressive, or what makes an impressive goalkeeper.
There's also that bizarre focus they have to have, right? Because there can be a lot going on at the other end of the field that doesn't directly involve you, and yet you've still got to be ready and positioned for a breakaway. And I think that might be the one thing that Ellis doesn't mention in the question is initial positioning. And from what I understand, that's the key to being a really top goalkeeper, right? Is to always be in the correct position, sort of ready for anything to happen.
Right, because you have to know your angles is what it comes down to. You have to know exactly where you are in relation to both the near and far post and the angle you're taking, the approach you're taking to cut off possible like shooting avenues for that forward. So even if it's on a breakaway, you've got to know when to come out, how to come out, when to go down, not to go down too early, not to go down too late. Like you've got to be able to gauge all of like the physics of that opportunity without blowing it. And that's the big part is number one, it comes down to positioning, which is why I think when you see a full stretch save, if you go back and evaluate like, oh, he had perfect positioning, it was just an amazing strike. And that goalkeeper or that male or female goalkeeper, since I've said he every time, manages to pull off that acrobatic save out of like good positioning, then that's one thing. When it's having to make the save because they took the wrong approach, maybe that cheapens it a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is. And I'm really interested in that. And I thought we would get to that in answering this question when I read it, is that that's still an impressive athletic feat, right? To have the reflexes and the stretch and the acrobatic, I don't know what the word is, athleticism, I guess, just to get across and make that save, right? But if it's because you were in the wrong place to begin with, then it's like, it's a good save, but it's not great goalkeeping.
Right.
So it can be both things at the same time, I guess.
And so, I mean, my Manchester United fandom will come through for a moment, and it's not even going to be about David De Gea. It's going to be about Edwin van der Sar. Because when he was playing with Man United, there was some discussion of, is he that good of a goalkeeper, or is it just that their defense is so good that he can keep these clean sheets? But a big part of that from me in the debate of whether or not he's a good goalkeeper is looking at what he does to, number one, organize the defense.
Yep.
So that you do have, at that time, Vidic and Rio knowing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, exactly where their responsibilities are, when to step, when to drop back. A lot of that is Edwin van der Sar behind him screaming, but it's also his ability to then position himself accordingly within that defensive system to not really be forced into making those ridiculous saves. He was capable of them, but a lot of times it was just kind of the steady saves from long range or from cutting off of an angle and not letting any kind of silly goals come in. Every goalkeeper is going to let in a howler here and there, but generally speaking, I think Edwin van der Sar was kind of that steady, calming presence in the back rather than that reactive, making crazy saves out of nowhere sort of goalkeeper.
Yeah, in some ways, like the full stretch save is the equivalent of the slide tackle for defenders, right? It's
exactly.
good to be able to do
That's
it.
A really good explanation.
It's better if you don't have to do it to begin with by cutting it out early. Can we talk about one thing Ellis asked specifically about, which was goalkeepers' decision-making when and why keepers come off their line?
Sure. So what do you want to talk about when they do it and why?
Yeah,
the answer is they do it when there's a guy dribbling right at them, and why is so he doesn't score?
No, I was imagining more coming off their line to come and claim a cross.
I see, okay.
Because that seems to be the thing that gets debated the most. Like, if a guy's dribbling at you, you pretty much have to come out and try and close down the angle, right? So it's not really debatable. But, I mean, there are better and worse ways of doing it. But the thing that always gets criticised on TV is the decision of whether or not to come and try and pick a cross out of the air. And sometimes you'll get there and just kill that play dead and you look like a hero. And sometimes you'll like drop it on the way. And sometimes you won't even get there and then someone just heads into an empty goal.
Right.
So I'm always curious about how certain do you think a goalkeeper has to be that they're going to get that ball when they come off their line and jump into the air, like jump over a centre back to try and get it?
Well, I think there's two parts here. I think to your question, I think they have to be very confident in their own ability to both in terms of their ability to get to that ball physically, but also to confident in their decision making to know that this is the correct time for me to step.
Yeah.
Because like the best thing I can compare it to for me as an outfield player is when there's a goal kick. And I will always be like, I'm going to win this goal kick. I'm going to win this in the air. Yeah. But I will start like running towards it as he's kicking it, just assuming that I know where it's going to go. And then it goes like 10 yards wide of me. And then I've completely, played myself out of position. So I think a goalkeeper can't just be all about like a full head of steam. I'm going to win this ball because we've seen that
fatal,
fail
right?
time again. Right.
If you don't win that header from the goal kick, and you do win a lot of headers from goal kicks when you play central midfield, but if you don't win that, it's not the end of the world, right? If a goalkeeper comes and misses, there's all kinds of trouble he has to deal with.
This is very true, and that's why I think part of it comes down to being informed, doing the research to know, okay, they're going to try to do this on this corner or this type of set piece. They tend to do this. My opponent does. So I'm going to set up like where I need to be able to charge and meet that ball. It also is then you have to be relying upon your defense to know that they're executing their responsibilities. So part of that is, again, that preparation. But I'll also say that I do think you can also see with a lot of goalkeepers, the goalkeepers who are maybe going to fade out around 31 or 32, and the goalkeepers are going to be Gigi Buffon and Tim Howard and stick around until they're 40. And that's adjusting your game plan, because I think a lot of times when you are 22, 23, you can come steaming off your line. You're usually this 6'4" goalkeeper. You're big, you're strong. You can knock people out of the way to get to that ball. As you age, you lose a little bit of that durability. Maybe you lose a little bit of that physicality as well. And so if your game plan is built around being the first one to that ball, you're going to lose a step and then you're going to have a problem. So I think the best goalkeepers are the ones who can figure out how to adjust and continue to play into their physical strengths.
Yeah, so you pick and choose like the probability of you getting to that ball. You got to learn that it changes over time, right? It's not the same at 38 as it is at 24.
This is very, very true. And actually, to go off on a semi-tangent, but I think it relates in the sense that we're talking about goalkeepers. A lot of questions that tend to come up about goalkeeping relate to why, for the longest time, the U.S. was able to create really good goalkeepers, if not really good outfield players. And I think I have an answer for it that kind of ties in with this question.
Okay.
Which is that, if you go back to like some of those World Cup teams, it was all about like how physically fit the U.S. teams were.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's always been prioritized. And we talked about Hugo Lloris's amazing save, 2 weeks ago at this point?
Yeah,
in the Champions League
for Spurs, yeah.
And it was all about his like core strength. And I think that like kind of looking at different ways to develop different muscle groups and be as fit as you can possibly be was for a very long time an American approach to sport. I don't know if you agree with me on that.
I sort of do, and I think it's a thing that everybody does now, right? So it's not necessarily the advantage it was in the past.
I agree, but similar to like when this like completely innovative idea of like, let's just press the team and counter their counter, like that was a completely innovative idea. Sort of like your goalkeeper should probably have abs was maybe an innovative idea that then led to American goalkeepers having the physical ability that maybe others didn't, so that they could be right like make that save and be right back up on their feet.
There's like a Leslie Jones test.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's how many abs do you have? But it's like, because a goalkeeper can make that full stretch save, but the truly amazing goalkeepers, and we've seen Tim Howard do this time and time again, is make that full stretch save and then like seemingly land and be back on his feet in the same motion. And that's the big thing, right? Is that it's not just like, oh, I've made this great save. Oh, but they still scored because I was laying on the ground and then they tapped it home. It's the ability to then be back on your feet and ready to go for the next shot, the next opportunity. That's what I think separates goalkeepers, and that's where I think Americans had an advantage for so long.
So, final two things for Ellis then. I would say that, yes, what you said, Taylor, the ability to make the save and then you see somebody get up for the next thing, that's impressive, right? But there's also, I think, where the ball goes when you save it. Because you can see the really good goalkeepers can sort of make sure to, once they make even a full stretch save, they'll make sure to direct it around the post or like out wide so that there's no more danger, right? Whereas the less able goalkeepers, and most professional goalkeepers will not be doing this, will sort of knock the ball back down into the 6-yard box where anyone can come and smash it home.
Yeah, that's not a great idea. Don't do that.
Don't do that. So, Ellis, we hope that was helpful.
We hope so. But my final point, then we'll be done, is that if you ever have played goalkeeper, specifically in indoor, you'll know that a big part about what makes a save difficult is that almost always you've got, 6, 7, 8 players in front of you at a minimum, sometimes, 10 to 12. And so it can also be an element of seeing that shot late with modern soccer balls, so much movement on them. They can be hit so easily to knuckle that it's also your ability to react and seeing it late that informs how difficult a save was, which is why you'll hear commentators say like, oh, he saw it late and was still able to get a hand to it. Like that's what they mean by that, is that quick reaction and that full stretch save combine into what makes an amazing save.
Yeah, so you can like see where the shot came from, see where the goalkeeper is, and try and imagine how blocked his view is by all the players in between.
Absolutely. Yeah. So goalkeepers are crazy physical specimens. That's what I have to say.
But also
and Leslie
heroes.
Jones would agree. Yes, that too.
Sexy heroes is what they are.
Sexy, crazy heroes, yeah.
Before we move on to scouting reports, Taylor, I got some news for you.
What you got?
Today's show is sponsored by Fuji.
Nice. That's good news.
It is.
It's always good news to have a sponsor.
The engineered soccer rebounder. We love Fuji. They've been a long-time sponsor. I'm currently waiting to edit a video of a really great game of Fuji we played with our whole team at a cookout, last Saturday?
I would say a really fun game. I wouldn't say a really great game of Fuji.
You mean not technically great? Maybe speak for yourself, I say.
As I said, I think I did the Fuji advertisement last week, and I was pointing out that I think what we learned when you're doing round Fuji is that the serve is important. Being the server is the most important at times.
Oh, yeah, because it's like tennis, right? Because you get to control it.
Yep.
So for anyone who's not familiar, and you really should be by now if you've been listening to TSS, Fuji is a rebounder with a court set up in front of it, and it works like squash or racquetball, where you play the ball into the rebounder, it bounces into the court, and then your opponent has to return it. We've heard from a listener, Taylor, Brian Horn. I know you've read this email as well, right?
I sure have.
Brian says that he and his son purchased a Fuji, they've been enjoying it, and they've created a new game to use for fun and for training. The game is called Messi, Messi. So it's kind of like horse, which I believe I've been told is something you play when you play basketball. I am not familiar.
You've never played horse?
No.
What is wrong with you?
I was born in England.
That's no excuse. Everyone has played horse.
Okay, there is a series of half courts near my apartment. On Thompson.
How about my wife was just walking past and froze and looked at me dumbfounded when I said you've never played horse.
Do you want to do it maybe next week?
I mean, only in the sense that we will reveal just how awful we both are at basketball, but sure.
I mean, we're not going to film it.
Okay, then yeah, that's fine, because every single one of my trick shots will be easy layup to the right side. I missed it. Never mind. But yeah, yes. So in the meantime, we can discuss the MESSI version of Fuchi. Let's do that instead.
Yeah. So Brian Horn and his son play MESSI, Messi. Basically, every time you miss, you get a letter. But the twist they put on it is that your opponent has to juggle the amount of letters you have. So if I have MES, like I've missed 3, then Taylor, you'll have to juggle 3 times before you return it. I feel like you're the only person who would actually benefit from this rule.
See, I don't agree. I think juggling makes it easier, which is why I think the standard official rule is 1 touch, because it makes it that much harder because you have to react quickly, be on your toes. You kind of can't like I feel like being able to juggle allows you to make that recovery touch and then get under control and then volley it back. Whereas 1 touch means you've got to scramble to get to the ball and you don't have the luxury of the recovery touch. You've just got to hit it against the net and hope, or fall and roll into the net and look stupid trying to make that first touch.
Well, maybe not everybody has your juggling skills.
Or lack thereof, yes. Because maybe not everyone. Maybe everyone doesn't have the thought that they are good at juggling. Is perhaps a better way to put that.
I'd say your juggling skills are second only to your juggalo skills.
Oh, that's horrific. Thanks for that.
The good news is, for people who would like to buy a Fuchi rebounder and work on their 1 touch or their juggling, there has been a price change. Fuchi rebounders at www.playfuchi.com, PLAYFUTCHI.com, are now only $149.99. That's the price has been lowered. We've been notified. But when you use the Total Soccer discount code, which has changed, it is now Total Soccer ! Sort of as all one word. You get that down to $129.99, so that's $20 off with Total Soccer ! All one word. We'll put that in the show notes so that people can find it.
That sounds like a plan.
I was curious as well if I got this right, because it changes on different sides of the Atlantic. ! Or exclamation mark?
I never know the difference. I think I say point because point makes more sense. But I guess it is also a mark, so who knows?
But people know what we mean, right?
Yes, and I feel like Mark Bujarski should go as that for his Halloween costume. He should just make an excited face, and then he's good.
So why
You're
Mark
welcome
Bujarski?
for that. Because then an excited faced Mark would be an exclamation mark. You're welcome for that. Actually, that did make me wonder. We're recording this on Halloween. Daryl Grove, if you were to go as a footballer, since I know you're back in England, or a soccer player, what would your costume be? Because I think the obvious one, I'll buy you some time. I think the obvious one for me, given the beard and the hair, would be Alexi Lalas. I just have to get red highlights, and then I could be good to go. So that's one. Can you think of a better one? Can you think of a good
it's tough, right?
Halloween costume?
It's got to be something that's really noticeable, right? And is not just like you're wearing that player's jersey. I know what I'd do. I'd go as Roberto Carlos, and I'd have massive, massive thighs. I'd put padding around my thighs.
You'd have to get a bald cap too, I think.
Yeah.
So.
That could work for me, though.
I think you could also go. You could buy, like extra small soccer shorts and get a fake mullet, a mullet wig, and a fake mustache, and just go as every '80s soccer player. That would work too. Super tight shorts, mullet, mustache. Done.
I saw some Halloween parties while I was home. It's definitely done differently here. Like, people only dress as like scary things for Halloween. People don't dress, so no one would go as a footballer, for example. Everyone's like a zombie or a mummy or anything like that.
Where in England?
Yeah, it sort of hasn't progressed to the point of just like dressing as anyone. It's only to the point of dressing as monsters.
I was wondering about that because I think it was Lucas Leiva on Twitter went as like the most terrifying looking zombie I've ever seen. It was like his lower part of his face was ripped off, and it was just like, wow, all right.
That Crystal Palace game was rough.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so final reminder.
So you're not dressing up then? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm not dressing up, no.
Okay.
Final reminder, it's www.playfuchi.com, spelled FUTCHI, and the discount code is Total Soccer ! And the game you can play, as recommended by Brian Horn, is called MESSI. I hope that's not copyrighted.
I hope. As long as you spell it out, I think you're fine.
All right, Taylor, scouting reports. We haven't done any for a week because I've been away.
Yeah, we've had many reports. We've got a few of them featured on today's show, more when you return, and then a few to be answered by email.
Okay, so should we get going with today's? This is the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network. These are talented young players that people who subscribe to TSS are keeping track of for us all around the world. Would you like to start us off, Taylor?
Sure. Up first is Chris Bernhardt scouting Tammy Abraham, the 19-year-old Chelsea forward, on loan at Bristol City.
Oh, I've genuinely been waiting to hear about Tammy Abraham because didn't he score a ton of goals last season? So he was kind of all set to make an impact.
That does sound familiar to me, Mr. Grove, and you'll be happy to hear that the 6'3" forward is doing what he does, which is knocking in the goals. He is currently the joint second top scorer in the championship with 9 goals and 2 assists. He has 12 goals in all competitions. The burning question, specifically for Bristol City fans, remains whether or not Chelsea will give him a chance next season. Chris says they seem resigned to losing him, so they're enjoying him while they have him.
Oh, I just don't see him playing for Chelsea because none of these youngsters have really been given a proper run in the Chelsea team, have they?
Well, I mean, it is like the beginning of the Antonio Conte era.
True.
So, and it is kind of more incumbent upon him to get Chelsea organized and situated and playing good soccer. Then maybe seasons 2, 3, and 4 are when he can start bringing those youngsters back and seeing what happens.
Okay, fair enough. All right, next up, Tom Miller is scouting Manuel Locatelli, the 18-year-old midfielder for AC Milan, who has been hitting the headlines recently. Tom says that Manuel was featured in the New York Times, which is how you know he's hit it big. There we go. More importantly, he scored the game winner to snap Milan's 9-game winless streak against Juventus. It was an absolute rocket to the top corner and is definitely worth watching. I agree because I saw it on Reddit.
I agree because I saw it in the link that Tom provided. It is a screamer. That's the best way I can put it, is an absolute screamer.
There is a Milan resurgence right now, right? Based around young players. And have you heard that rumour linking sort of Michael Bradley with a possible move there in January?
Yeah, I talked with, I asked Alexi Lalas how likely he thought that was. And it seems like he thinks that there's a chance that move happens.
So Locatelli-Bradley partnership in central midfield. I could watch that. I would definitely be a lot more interested in Serie A if Michael Bradley was back there and playing in a sort of an exciting young Milan team.
I have kind of speaking of Michael Bradley, in watching Toronto's game yesterday, I have to say I'm a little bit bummed out about Michael Bradley, and not for the reasons that you might suspect.
Yeah, I thought he played pretty well. I sort of casually watched, but he seemed pretty good to me.
That's why I'm bummed out. He played really well, and if you look at the celebrations, it's the most energized I've seen Michael Bradley in a very long time. And you kind of contrast that with the way he looks when he's playing with the U.S. men's national team.
Yeah.
And you wonder if maybe he's enjoying playing with Toronto a bit more than he is the U.S. national team at present.
I see.
He's just so amped up when they score those goals. He's celebrating like Felix Passlack would celebrate.
Well, to be fair, I mean, it's playoffs, right? Whereas the US, it's been friendlies recently.
This is true.
I mean, maybe if you go back to Copa America, you'd see a more excited Michael Bradley.
Maybe so. But let's move on to happier topics, specifically for you, because Robert Grebel, who's scouting Ovi Ejaria, excuse me, I think he's given me the phonetic pronunciation. Ejaria is how he thinks it goes.
Okay.
The 18-year-old midfielder for Liverpool and England, it seems. Robert reports, in news that may warm Daryl's heart, Ovi was called up to the England U20 squad earlier this month for the Four Nations tournament. He got the start in England's 2-0 win over the US and scored the opening goal. This is particularly important since Ejaria had previously been called into the Nigeria youth camp, but he, I guess, looks likely to be playing for England instead. He also got his first
good choice.
Yeah, he got his first start for the senior Liverpool team in their EFL Cup match and win over Tottenham last week.
I watched that game. Oh, speaking of,
Yep.
Charles McHugh is
keep
scouting.
on going. We've got a few more.
Charles McHugh is scouting Trent Alexander-Arnold, the 18-year-old central midfielder / right back, at least in this game, for Liverpool. Charles says, Liverpool Academy product Trent Alexander-Arnold made his League Cup debut at right back against Spurs in that game we just mentioned. Arnold had a solid performance, looking lively going forward and comfortable in defence. Agree. A tender embrace from Jurgen Klopp solidified a memorable debut when Trent was replaced by Nathaniel Klein. Charles says more performances like this will help Trent Alexander-Arnold usurp Terence Trent D'Arby as his favourite British Trent.
Which I think is Trent Alexander-Arnold's number one goal. Final report.
Oh, Taylor, I've got to stop you. Half time in that game, Jamie Redknapp was doing some of the commentary for Sky Sports.
Yeah.
And he said that the young right back for Liverpool, Cameron Carter-Vickers, is having a good game.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did. He got the sort of I think it was the double barrel name got Jamie Redknapp confused.
Well, you've seen the other.
He didn't make notes. He winged it. Oh yeah, the Victor Moses thing. Yeah,
and then the Victor Moses thing, where it's nice to see a young English lad getting some performances. Victor Moses, who's been capped by Nigeria like 21 times, and he's 26 years old.
Yep.
Yeah, good stuff.
I saw that.
Oh, highly paid pundits with the last name Redknapp. And then Final report still regards this game comes from John Adams, not that John Adams, scouting Shayon Harrison. John says, first of all, hello from jury duty.
Hey.
Secondly, he says that Shayon Harrison made his senior debut for Spurs midweek. We aren't going to talk about the fact that Spurs lost 2-1 to Liverpool in the EFL Cup, or that he only came on the 84th minute, or that he only had 4 touches in his 6+2 minutes. John says, I guess we can talk about that he completed 66.67 of his passes because 2 out of 3 is only 66.666666%. He does, however, continue to score goals for the Tottenham Premier League 2 squad, 6 goals in total.
I have an addendum to this report, Taylor.
What you got?
Because, like I said, I watched this game, right? Mm-hmm. So it was 2-0 to Liverpool. Vincent Janssen won a penalty and scored it, make it 2-1. Shayon Harrison came on for the final few minutes. There was a beautiful cross that found him in the box unmarked. He would have had the chance to equalise. It was like in the final 2 or 3 minutes. He tried to take it down on his chest, and it just chested too far ahead of him and went straight to the Liverpool keeper. And he looked absolutely gutted because he had a golden chance to equalise in this game.
So you're saying basically that we should just give up hope now?
Well, no, but we should be a little concerned that it's like if you with the what's it called, like the reserve in a play. And the lead went down with an injury, and you went on opening night, and you sort of forgot the words. He fluffed his lines, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, I'm sure there will be more opportunities for young Mr. Harrison.
Yeah,
we should be okay. Yeah. I think.
Let's hope so.
All right. Well, that is all the scouting reports we're going to feature on today's show. We have gotten many more, as you said. It's been a good 10 days since we read scouting reports, which means the inbox has been filling up.
Oh, it's bursting.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's worth saying, if you want to join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, if you want to support the show, you can go to totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. All the information is there. If you subscribe at $5 a month or higher, you get a scout. If you go $10 a month or higher, we guarantee to answer one of your questions a month on the Total Soccer Show. So $10 a month or higher, we guarantee to answer a question.
Yes,
Taylor,
sir.
have you got any more questions for me before we wrap this up?
How's England?
How's the world?
How's the world of the Brexit?
Oh, I had a bit of an argument with my brother last night about that.
Oh no! No! Let's just stay on happier topics. So you still have no plans to see Wolverhampton while you're there, is that correct?
I can't. No, I watched them a little bit on TV. They were on TV against Blackburn, but they're managerless right now, right? And then I think the next game, they played Derby on Saturday, and I think we already talked about this, right? I'll be on my way home, so I won't be able to see them. Right. I did go and see some quality non-league football, though. I know you know this.
Yeah, that's right.
I sent you a photo, right? Mm-hmm. Do you want to hear about this?
Sure.
So this is Tiverdale FC in the Midlands Premier League.
The Mighty Tivs.
The Mighty Tivs. I don't believe they go by that.
Who are they playing?
Tivy is what they go by. Shawbury United in a relegation battle in the
Fighting Shaws.
The Midland Premier League. It's like the 8th or so tier of English football. It's still semi-professional. The Mighty 8. All the players getting paid. And it was my 20-year-old nephew was playing for them, which is really exciting to see someone from my family playing semi-professional football.
Yeah, how do you do?
He did well. He didn't score, but they won 2-1, and he basically played on his own up front and did really well. And so this is a kid who didn't have a glamorous youth career, like he wasn't at a Villa or Coventry academy or anything like that. All the other players are, and he was just someone who was picked up playing Sunday League football because he scored 4 goals. Someone spotted him and just offered him this contract. It's like a mini Jay Demerit story, but just within the West Midlands instead of transatlantic.
We add him to the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network then?
Yeah, we should do, yeah. We'll add Dan Smith to Total Soccer Show Scouting Network.
I like it. My final question for you then. You were concerned as you were leaving about the contrast in weather. How has the weather been in England?
It's been surprisingly good. Has not rained once since I've been here. Some people think that I've sort of brought good weather with me across the Atlantic. But I'm not sure my luck's going to hold all week.
Johnny Weatherseed over there.
Johnny Weatherseed, yeah.
There we are. Well, we await your return. I think it started off about 52 degrees yesterday, and for my second game of the day was 85. Ooh. So thanks, Richmond. Yeah.
All right, looking good.
Yeah. Fun times. Fun times overall.
All right, Taylor, we'll record maybe a couple more questions later today, so we can you can broadcast those later in the week. But because I believe you've got some interviews coming up, right?
I do. Nothing totally set in stone yet, so we won't hype them up too much. But yes, hopefully some interviews later on in the week.
All right, until then, Taylor, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today from all the way across the Atlantic.
I believe that you have usurped my hosting duties since I began the hosting of the show. I will say, Daryl Grove, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Sorry, I naturally sort of leaned in, right? I'll tell you what, I'll give you the final word. How about that?
Go the mighty Tivs. Up the mighty Tivs. There we go.